Uh, Gabby Pacheco, thank you for being here, and thanks for all you've done on behalf of the Dreamers. My staff has asked me to read the stories of some more Dreamers. I've done that 54 times on the floor of the United States Senate. Each one of these stories is amazing in its own right. The accomplishments of these young people, the fact that they've known no other country in their lives, and they want to be part of America's future. They have extraordinary educational achievements that they managed to put together in American schools that were opened by American taxpayers. So their education has been supported by our country. And now with all the skill and talent, they're just being asking us to give them a chance. So Mr. Kobach, do you think the Dreamers deserve a chance to become legal in America?
You know, that of course involves a lot of calculations because, you know, we're talking about, for example, in the DREAM Act part of the bill, we're talking about resources, places. For example, the DREAM Act portion of the bill, like many of the DREAM Acts we've seen proposed before Congress since 2001, says that the current provision against giving in-state tuition rates to illegal aliens has to be removed as part of the DREAM Act. And so we're talking about...
So you want to get into, I just want to ask a matter of principle. Let's go down to basic values here. These young people were brought to America, Gabby, at the age of 8. It wasn't exactly her decision to come from Ecuador. It was her family's decision. And time and again, we are finding cases where children were brought in and the parents didn't file the right papers or overstayed a visa, and the child knew nothing about it. So getting beyond immigration policy and the specifics, which we could talk about for a long time, as a basic matter of justice and fairness, do you believe that these young people should be penalized for the wrongdoing of their parents?
Well, see, and that's exactly where I was going to go, to that biblical metaphor, that biblical verse. We are not supposed to punish the children for the sins of the parents, but similarly, we probably shouldn't reward the children for the sins of the parents. I would say treat the children neutrally, without respect to the sins of the parents. And what would treating them neutrally? I think that would be the most just thing to do.
So how would you treat them neutrally?
I would treat them neutrally by treating them the equivalent of other people who hold the same nationality. And so therefore don't allow them to jump ahead, which is what it is, jump ahead of the line by retaining their presence in the United States. Allow them to have the same opportunity. That might include getting rid of the 10-year bar. I think that might be a reasonable proposal for Dreamers. And go back and get in line with the rest of their country.
Well, you see, we debated that. And it's interesting because 8 senators, 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, and some pretty conservative Republicans, I might add, basically came to the opposite conclusion. They said what you were suggesting is punishment. What you were suggesting is that they should be punished and put to the back of the line, and they've never done anything wrong. I've been at this for 12 years. I've met hundreds, maybe thousands of these young people. And to suggest that somehow they are guilty, culpable, should pay a price for what they did wrong, it just defies basic compassion, which I feel is part of this calculation, as well as justice. And I would say to you that this notion that we heard in the last campaign of self-deport, I think that might have been one of your points of view at that time. I mean, overlooking the obvious, America will be a stronger nation when we acknowledge who we are. My mother was an immigrant to this country, brought here at the age of 2. She was a dreamer of her generation. Her son is now a United States Senator. That's my story. It's my family's story. That happens to be America's story. She was given a chance to naturalize at the age of 23, and she did. And I've got her certificate sitting on the back of my desk. I'm so proud of it. I think America is a little better because Ona Kutkin came over on a boat from Lithuania and managed to live here and make a life. And you know what? My story's not unique. And what happened to her, what was given to her, that opportunity made this the country it is today. And I think many people who resist and fight back against immigration are ignoring who we are, our birthright as a nation. We went through 3 months of debate over this, at least 24 separate meetings, trying to figure out what was a just and fair way to resolve this. But this notion that immigrants are somehow negative or bad for America, that isn't a fact at all, never has been. And I think what we've come up with is a fair approach. Can it be improved? Sure. I'm open to improvement. But when it comes right down to Gabby Pacheco and hundreds of thousands just like her, Mr. Kobach, she's never known any other country. This is her home.
May I briefly
Sure,
respond?
of course.
I don't think it's fair to characterize those of us who think we should restore the rule of law as saying we're resisting immigration. We're resisting illegal immigration, and we're resisting a system where we have essentially the national interests of the United States not being promoted in deciding who may enter the country, who may stay in the country, and the rules for coming in. And self-deportation is not some radical idea. It is simply the idea that people may comply with the law by their own choice. Whenever we have a law enforcement problem, deterrence is basically the typical solution law enforcement adopts. That is, you increase the penalties so that they start complying with the law. Self-deportation is something that Arizona has proven that if you ratchet up the penalties for violating the law, people will choose to leave. And it has been proven that they do that.
You were an elected official in Kansas, correct?
Correct.
So am I. I'm an elected official in Illinois. And what we have basically said is ultimately the voters have the last word. The voters had the last word on self-deportation on November 6th. So we're beyond that now. I mean, you can stick with that theory as long as you'd like. But I think that what we're talking about now is whether America is a better country if we have an immigration system that brings 11 million people out of the shadows to register with this government so we know who they are, where they are, do a criminal background check, or whether we leave them in the shadows. I think it's pretty clear. We're a better nation when we have these 11 million people coming forward. And for these dreamers, yes, they're being treated differently, given perhaps a better chance toward legalization. But it's still not an easy path. Most of them have spent their lives in hiding for fear of being deported. And they've achieved amazing things despite that. So we just come down to this with a different point of view. And I'm going to stop now because I think I have the gavel, or if I go over and retrieve it. And are there other members who'd like to make a comment or statement? Who's next? Senator Cornyn, please.
Mr. Chairman.